In the eternal night basin, the darkness is like a heavy curtain, covering the dome forever. Lena, who was 18 years old, curled up in the ruins of the orphan garden. This stone building that once sheltered countless lonely souls is now only left with walls and walls, swallowed by vines and shadows. She was used to this kind of loneliness, and the cold wind at night cried out like a murmur, reminding her of her fragility as an orphan. Lena's hands were rough and she had recovered from her childhood. She always wore a broken cylindrical ring, which was her only thing, said to be from an unknown family. Tonight, she came here again, not to find food, but was driven by an inexplicable sense of call and impatience hidden deep in her heart, which made her unable to sleep. Deep in the ruins, a faint light overflowed from the pile of gravels, like the lost stars in the night sky. Lena wanted to ignore it, but in this eternal night, the light often means danger. But curiosity was too terrifying. She swept open the covered soil, revealing a sanctuary shining with ancient runes. The runes are twisted like living things, emitting light of light and scattering the darkness around them. Lena's heartbeat was accelerating. She had never seen anything like this, with complex pictures engraved on the surface of the hanging wall as if from ancient legends. She instinctively reached out and touched her, and the ice-cold metal instantly burst out with a strong heat flow, shaking her arms. A mysterious force woke up in her body. The light burst out, illuminating the ruins as white as white. Lena felt a warm current flowing from the hole into her chest, as if it was igniting the sleeping flames. Her vision blurred for a moment, and the images of flashing scenes in the sea of brains, high mountains, a hidden spring, and a blurred figure. She heard a low murmur, as if ancient language was calling her name. The Guardian. The sound was heard in the air, and no one opened his mouth. Lena took a step back, gasping for a while, holding the hanging wall tightly with both hands. She was an ordinary girl, and she was keen on endurance and survival, but at this moment she felt an irresistible shock. The power flipped inside her, like a torrent, bringing both exciting and fearful chaos. "What is this?" Lena murmured. She tried to breathe calmly, and found that her voice had become calm. The runes of the hanging wall began to rotate slowly, releasing a faint movement, as if synchronizing with her heartbeat. She recalled the scene of her childhood, which had flashed through similar light, but she always thought it was an illusion. Now, everything is connected. The mythological story of the orphanage mentioned the lost artifacts, saying that they chose guardians and gave them the power to fight against the eternal night. But Lena has never believed these news. She has always seen herself as a lack of light existence. At this moment, the restlessness in her body proves her life experience. Perhaps, she is not an orphan who was abandoned by chance, but a destined existence. The darkness around began to retreat, and the light spread out to the ruins, illuminating the nearby woodland. Lena stood up and felt an unprecedented courage pouring into her heart. Her eyes were flashing with strange light, and the hanging in her hands was no longer cold, but as warm as a living thing. She knew that this force was closely linked to her past and hidden the roots she had never explored. The vulnerability of the past begins to fade, replaced by the call of mission. She must face all this and can no longer escape. Lena took a deep breath and put a crochet on the hanging mat, feeling it blending with herself. As we walked out of the ruins, the night wind gently brushed her face, and the shadows of trees in the woodland danced in the light. She looked far away. The unknown forbidden area seemed to be summoning her forward. Lena's pace is getting more stable. She knows that this is just the beginning. An adventure is about to open, and she will find her true self. Lena stepped out of the ruins, and the shadows extended in the woodland like a wriggling touch, and the surrounding air seemed to condense into a layer of moist and cold fog. She held the hanging wall around her neck, and the warm current was still circulating in her body, guiding her towards the deep call. The woodland is disturbingly quiet, with trees twisting like ancient guards, and branches are lightly scattered in the invisible wind. Lena's pace was light and quick, and each step brought her closer to the blurry image, a hidden spring, flashing in the brain. She knew that stopping her steps would only make her fear devour her, so she speeded up and went deeper into this forgotten area. Soon, the ground suddenly fell, and a hidden trap collapsed under her feet, and the soil and vines scattered up like living things. Lena instinctively ducked, and the hanging wall burst out with golden light, tearing the darkness around her apart. She felt a surge of energy, slamming her limbs from her chest, and a soft barrier condensed from her palms, shaking the vines. As the dark creature appears, a group of creatures shaped like distorted shadows emerge from the tree, with their eyes flashing with thirsty red light. Their claws plant over the air and emit sharp hiss. Lena's heart beats like a war drum. She lifted the hanging wall and recited the ancient words that were reflected in her memory. The light turned into an arc, repelling the nearest creatures, allowing them to scatter after experiencing painful mourning. Her actions were reckless. This was the first time she used this force. The heat in her body made her forget her lonely fear and replaced it with a brand new confidence. Just as she was gasping and calming, a striking light plodded across the forest and accurately blocked the touch of another creature. Lena turned around and saw a tall figure walking out of the tree shadow. It was Carl, a silent wanderer whose long sword reflected the faint moonlight, and the frost of the old moon was engraved on his face. He was about 30 years old, his eyes were as cold as ice, and his clothes were covered with dust and blood, which seemed to have just experienced a fierce battle. Carl glanced at Lena's hanging wall and his eyebrows rose slightly. "You shouldn't get into here alone," his voice was low and straightforward, like an unsheathed sword. "That thing attracted something that shouldn't come." Lena held the hanging wall tightly and took a step back, her eyes filled with vigilance and curiosity. "Who are you? Why do you interfere?" Her words were filled with awakened courage, and she couldn't hide her inner movements. She knew that this woodland not only hides danger, but also connects with her life experience. Carl did not answer immediately, and he slapped the shadows around him, and the tip of the sword sagged slightly. "I followed the devil's minions, and they were wandering here like a plague. I saw your light." He paused for a moment, his language slightly exhausted. "It has something to do with what I was chasing. The passage of the spring of light cannot be touched by casual means." The creatures around were ready to move again, and a larger puppet-like monster rushed out of the bush, pointing straight at Lena. Carl quickly advanced, and the blade made a series of cold lights, forcing the monster to retreat. Lena joined the battle, and the light in her hands condensed again, forming Car's move. Their tacit understanding of action was amazing, despite the first meeting. In the battle, Carl's magic is precise and ruthless, and every blow seems to suppress some deep anger. Lena glanced at a burst of pain in his eyes and couldn't help asking, "Why are you chasing these things? It's not just for survival, right?" Carl stopped and gasped, "The past is left to the darkness to swallow. I have lost too much to let them destroy others." His words were short, revealing a burst of pain, an unspeakable past. After the battle ended, the two leaned on the tree and gasped. Lena's heartbeats twitched. She looked at Carl, her heart sank. Trusting a stranger means giving up the safety of being alone, and it may also reveal more truth. She recalled her life experience. The abandoned orphan identity is now tied to this mission. "Do you know where the spring of light is?" she asked, her voice calming down. Carl pointed. "I know the road, but I need allies. How about exchanging protection and information?" Lena hesitated for a moment, and the warmth of the hanging wall moved in her palm, reminding her that this was the destined road. She took a deep breath and said, "Okay, I accept it. But don't betray me." They continued to move forward. The shadow of the woodland gradually became thinner, and a glimmer of dawn shone out from the distance. Lena walked aside, feeling the inner transfusion resolved, and the connection with Carl made her clearer in her position. In the night, their steps and sounds formed a progressive rhythm. They moved forward along the shiny light, the forest became heavier and the trees around them stood like silent sentries, and the vines meandered on the ground like live wires. Lena felt the movement of the penis synchronized with her heartbeat, bringing a steady force, making her ignore the chill around her. Carl walked ahead, his steps were steady, the handle was tightly held in his hands, his eyes slapped at every cataract. The air is filled with the smell of soil and the old, and the ancient rage is scattered in scattered spaces. Blurred runes are carved on the broken stone pillars, as if complaining about forgotten remarks. They didn't say much, but just exchanged eyes and walked in a consistent way through the forbidden area. Soon, the road became narrower, and strange vines emerged from the ground, like guardian-touching figures surround their steps. Lena first noticed the danger. She shouted lightly and quickly lifted the hanging wall. A soft energy burst out, shaking the vines into dead leaves. Carl glanced back at her, and the corner of his mouth slightly slapped, which was a rare affirmation. "Your power is growing," he said, sounding like a whisper, "but the trap here is not just outside." His words are simple and revealing his familiarity with the forest, as if he had traveled countless times. They continued to go deeper, becoming denser, with a half-destroying stone arch standing in the middle of the road, covered with frost patterns. Lena touched the arch door curiously, and felt a biting cold rushing into her fingertips. She recalled the battle the moment before, and that awakened confidence made her look directly at Carl. "You said you followed the devil's minions," she asked, with a determination to explore in her voice. "What does this place mean for you?" Carl stopped and touched the ground with a sharp slash. His eyes flashed through a shadow. "This is my old place," he replied, his voice suppressing the waves inside. "I once lost my family here. The power of the devil swallowed everything, and I vowed to end it." His words were as sharp as a blade, without much explanation, and Lena felt the hidden pain. She pointed at her head, without asking, and her heart began to connect her loneliness in his tragedy. Suddenly, a low roar erupted from the front, shaking the air. Behind the stone arch, a large figure appeared, the guardian of the frost, a giant beast like a northern European myth, with a hill-shaped body covering the flashing ice armor, and his eyes burning like blue flames. It opened its huge mouth and spit out a cold breath, causing the surrounding trees to tie a layer of thin ice. Lena instinctively retreated, and the wall responded warmly to help her stabilize her body. "What is that?" she whispered, with awe and warning scattered in her voice. Carl pulled out his sword, his posture flowing like flowing water. "Ancient guardian," he said, "it guards the way to the spring. Don't stand it, with your light." The giant beasts rushed, and the ground was scattered by its pace. Lena took a deep breath, focused her energy, turned the power of the pendant into a golden barrier, trying to block its attack. The barrier collided with the ice armor, making a harsh burst sound, and the fragments scattered. Carl took advantage of the opportunity to flash to one side, and his sword was as fast as a storm, bladed over the ice layer and cut off several pieces of broken ice. The giant beast turned towards him, slammed a claw, and Carl quickly avoided, but his sleeves were scattered by the cold air. He gritted his teeth and slashed at the beast's leg, and shouted, "Lena, look for its weakness. Power is not a blind collision." During the battle, Lena glanced at the crack in the giant's chest. The frost there was thinner, as if it was an old wound. She adjusted her posture and allowed the light of the hanging wall to condense into a precise beam of shooting, hitting the place. The light penetrated the ice layer, causing a roar. The giant beast slowly retreated, giving Carl opportunity. He lifted up, pointing his sword straight at the eye, and there was a suppressed anger in his movements. "I used to be powerless to such monsters," he gasped. His swordsmanship continued. "At that time, my eyes were scattered as everything went down. Now, I won't retreat." His words doubled Lena's courage. She joined the battle, and the light in her hands intertwined with his sword, forming a tacit coordination. As the battle continued, Lena's physical strength began to be consumed. She felt the thrust in her heart. The power of the hanging wall is not only a weapon, but also an experience of self-recognition. Every time the giant's reaction was like challenging her determination. She recalled her lonely life experience, and the pain of being abandoned gradually faded in Carl's company. "We can win," she shouted, "not me alone, but we are together." Carl pointed his head, his eyes flashed warmly, and his sword finally stabbed the giant beast's vital point. The ice armor shattered, and the beast body collapsed. After the last blow, the giant beast turned into a cold wind and dissipated, leaving only a thin layer of frost on the ground. They leaned against the nearby stone pillars, gasping. Lena wiped off her sweat and looked at Carl. The battle made her realize that the power in her heart not only came from the wall, but also from the contact of her partners. Your past makes you stronger, she said, her voice soft and firm. Carl put his sword away and looked far away. There are great prices, he replied lightly, but now, I see hope. The forest's glimmer seemed to be brighter, and they knew that the spring of light was close. They stood up and continued to move forward, stepping over the scattered ice chips. In the night, a warm feeling spreads ahead, reflecting their tired and determined faces. They continued to move forward, stepping on the scattered ice chips, and the night gradually became thinner, replaced by the soft light that shone out from the front. The shadows of the forest fade away, and the surrounding air becomes fresh and moist, as if entering another level of realm. Lena felt the warmth of the hanging wall spread out on her chest. The energy was no longer a rapid movement, but flowing smoothly like a stream. Carl walked beside him, his breathing calmly, holding the handle in his hand relaxed, his eyes constantly slapped around him with a warning. Soon, the scenery turned into a mysterious stone garden. The stone blocks were old and round, arranged into misty roads, surrounded by slim mists, as light and soft as thin. The air is filled with the mixture of soil and flowers, and a faint sound of flowing water is spread far away. This spiritual realm is not as full of enemies as the previous forest, but it emits a calm pressure, which makes Lena's thoughts fall into deep involuntarily. Carl stopped and pointed to a stone tablet full of symbols. This is the ancient test site, he said, his voice low and steady. They do not harm the body, but enter the heart. His words were simple, with an unavoidable power, which made Lena understand that this was the time she had to face. Lena set foot on the road in the stone garden, and the smoke immediately surrounded her ankles, turning into a blurred image. At first, she saw her past as an orphan, those vague memories flowed like a tide, abandoned village, cold eyes, and the hollow deep inside. She instinctively stepped back and heard Carl's voice coming from behind. Stand steady, he said, his words were as solid as a stone. This is the experience of yin-yang, with light and shadow interdependent, and balanced inside and outside. Don't let the past inertia swallow you. Carl didn't say much, and he accurately pointed out the core. He had experienced similar traits, revealing the hidden pain in his eyes. A light wind blew up, and the fog condensed into an illusion, presenting Lena's inner conflict. She saw herself split into two figures, one was a fragile loner, curled up in the darkness, the other was a guardian holding a sling, bathed in the light. The two pulled her, causing a tearing feeling to swelling in their chest. Lena took a deep breath and tried to tune in this force. How should I balance? She asked, her voice trembling slightly, filled with determination. Carl approached, stood beside her, and shared, I had used to face similar phantoms on this ground. At that time, I lost my family, and the shadow of the devil swallowed my world. His words were as direct as a knife, without much emotion, which made Lena feel the deep sadness. It is not to escape from darkness, but to let it merge with light. Try meditation and feel the inner harmony. Lena closed her eyes, followed Carl's guidance, focusing on the energy of the hanging wall. The force flowed through her tranquility, mingling the fragility of the orphan with the mission of the guardian. She imagined the symbol of the yang, which was circling in her heart, and darkness and light depended on each other. The illusion begins to change, and the two figures gradually merge into one, turning into a complete self. When she opened her eyes quietly, the mist had disappeared, and was replaced by a pool of quiet water in the middle of the garden, with light and rippling surfaces. Carl pointed, You have made progress, he said, and his mouth moved slightly, which was a rare affirmation. Power comes from within, the real impulse. However, the trial has not yet ended. At the other end of the stone garden, there is an illusion of illusions. A high-profile stone wall blocks the way, and the wall is full of pictures that symbolize conflicts. Lena felt the penis strengthening, and she lifted it up, and a soft light shot out from the stone wall, which was swallowed by the shadow on the wall. Carl pulls the sword, the tip of the sword touches the ground lightly, indicating cooperation. This is the trait of emotion, he said, to combine your light with my will. They went forward together, and Lena's energy intertwined with Car's drama, resolving the barriers of the stone wall. During the process, Car shared more of his past. I was blind because of revenge, he murmured. I can't face the devil until I learn to be harmonious. His words were like a light guided by the guide, which gradually calmed Lena's heart. With the advancement of the test, Lena realized that true courage is not from external battles, but from internal peace. Her hanging light became more stable, perfectly synchronized with her heartbeat. They traveled through the stone garden, and the fog gradually dissipated, revealing a narrow line leading to the spring of light. Carl put his sword away and looked at Lena. You have found your balance, he said, his voice carrying a faint warmth. Lena slid her head, wiped off the thin sweat from the vast body, and filled her heart with a new determination. They continued to move along the narrow road, and the quietness of the stone garden was gradually replaced by the sound of flowing water in the distance. In the night, a warm light flashed in front of them, reflecting their tired and safe faces. They moved forward along the narrow lines, stepping on the tide stone slab, and the soft glimmer of silk in the distance gradually spread into a hazy brilliance. The air is filled with mud, which is fragrant with hidden ancient trees. The surrounding scenery changes from the quietness of the stone garden to a place hidden deep in the deep valley. Lena's eyes were locked in front of her. It was a stone arch with vines crawling on the surface, and blurred runes were carved on the stone wall, as if she was talking about the long-standing past. The hanging slammed slightly on her chest, and the energy fluctuated like a hidden tide, making her unable to help but hold her clothes tightly. Carl walked beside her, his steps were steady, his palms resting on the sheath. His eyes were always as sharp as the cold wind, sniffing at the shadows around him. This place is not just a mess, he said, his voice low and direct. They will have a single buried memory. Are you ready for the face? His words are simple and powerful, revealing the wisdom that has been tempered from his experience, without any extra comfort. Lena clicked her head and felt an inexplicable pressure surge from the bottom of her heart. She lifted the hanging wall and arched the door. The light shot out like a thread, instantly illuminating the scene inside the horizon. The fog flows from all directions and condenses into vivid illusions. First, there was the village where she was young, the abandoned house, and the villagers' eyes were filled with fear and separation. She saw herself, as a lonely child, curled up in the corner of a rainy night, with vague crying sounds in her ears. Why? She murmured, her voice carrying a trembling slight sound. This is my past, swaying like a curse. The illusion deepened, and she saw a vague figure of a woman, her mother, holding the same hanging wall, standing in front of the dark sutra. The woman whispered ancient mantras, and her eyes were filled with the endless light. Then, the shadow of the devil spread like ink, swallowing everything around him. It was the devil's curse, an eternal shadow that strangled the family in the shackles of fate. Lena's mother chose to give up and abandon her to change a faint opportunity to survive. The illusion shattered in front of her eyes, and her chest felt like it was being knocked by a sharp knife. The reason I was knocked down, was it to escape from the curse? She asked softly, her breath scattered with anger and pain. Carl did not respond immediately. He stood quietly beside him, touching the ground with a sharp tip, his eyes as deep as an ancient lake. I have witnessed similar darkness, he said, his verbal weight. My family turned into ashes in the Demon King's war. I once thought revenge could fill the void and bring only more shadows. His words were as precise as a knife, revealing the scars in his heart without any refinement, allowing Lena to feel the hidden loneliness. Carl turned to her, his eyes firmly as steel. The truth is not a shackle, but a weapon. Let them become your power, not your purity. Lena took a deep breath and tried to sort out the chaotic thoughts. She closed her eyes and focused on the movement of the hanging wall. The energy flowed like a river, carrying her through the mystery in her heart. The illusion changed again, and this time it showed her connection with the Demon King. The hangbar was originally a family object, a double-blade sword, which is both the source of the guardian and the root of the curse. Her mother had tried to break the chain and failed. Now, the illusion indicates that she must merge into this darkness and transform into her own power. Lena opened her eyes quietly, holding the sling tightly. I can't escape anymore, she said, her voice gradually becoming more and more stable. This curse will be ended by me. Carl clicked his head and pulled out the sword, and the body reflected a glimmer of light. "We are not fighting alone," he said, a rare warmth in his language. "Alliance is not a pure cooperation, but a shared burden." He plotted against the illusion between the illusion, and the energy intertwined into a barrier, gradually disintegrating the dark images. During the process, Lena felt the connection between the two deepening, and Carl's coldness stabilized her mind as stable as an escort stone. She recalled him and tried to transform the shadow of the family into a determination and draw strength from her fragility. The illusion finally dissipated, and a winding ladder appeared in the depths, leading to a farther realm. Lena wiped off her sweat, and her heart was as calm as a clear lake. She turned to Carl. "Thank you," she said lightly, her eyes flashing with a new light. "Your words allow me to see the way forward." Carl put away the sword and smiled slightly. It was a moment of softness. "Let's continue, this road is still long." They stepped onto the ladder, and in the night, the sound of the flowing water from afar became clear, and the glimmer flashed in front of them like a guide light, reflecting their exhausted and fulfilling figures. They walked down the winding stairs. The stones were rough and damp, and each step was resounding with a low resonance. The flowing water in the distance sounded like a whisper, gradually covering up the silence behind him. Lena took the lead, holding the hanging wall in her hand, her eyes casting her eyes on the shadows around her. The vines there curled up like living things, and the air was filled with the breath of soil and moss. Carl followed behind him, his figure as solid as a rock, and his handle turned slightly in his palm, swaying warningly at the potential danger. "This curse, it is like a shadow from my sensibility." Lena opened her mouth to break the silence, her voice roaring in the narrow passage, carrying an unwounded anger. She recalled the scenes in the fantasy, and the betrayal of her mother's vague figure was as painful as a spike. "I always think that being alone is my destiny. It is regarded as an alien by the villagers, and my family also chose to give up. I was angry not because I hated them, but because I hated myself for not being able to be detained." She paused for a moment, relaxed her steps, lifted the sling, letting it radiate a faint light to illuminate the way forward. Her words were straightforward and powerful, revealing the deep fragility of her heart, without pleading verbal tutoring. Carl heard it, his eyebrows slightly browed. His breathing was steady and his pace never shifted. "I understand," he responded. His temperament was as direct as an iron lens digging the ground, without much emotion. His eyes were fixed in front of him, as if passing through time. "My family was flying in the flames of the Demon King. The disaster was not an accident, but a deliberate one. I had pursued revenge, traveled all over the wilderness, killing countless puppet-like enemies, but found that hatred would only make the hollow bigger." He stopped and turned to Lena, his eyes slanted like fire. "I thought I could avoid the pain by hiding it, but I didn't expect it to follow like a ghost. Your curse, or maybe like mine, is a shackle of life, but we can choose how to face it." His words were simple, and the weight that was tempered from the middle of the year, allowing Lena to feel the hidden co-bearing. They continued to move forward. The ladder gradually became steep, and strange runes floated on the stone walls on both sides, flashing with faint light. Lena took a deep breath and turned the anger in her heart into a determination. "So, how should we break it?" she asked, voice scattering the heat of the challenge. She stretched out her hand and touched Car's arm, a move that was instinctive and honest, symbolizing that she began to open up her guard. "I don't want to be swallowed by the past anymore. I want to be like you and draw strength from it." Carl clicked his head and the corners of his mouth slightly raised, which was a very difficult softness in a moment. "Strength comes from trust," he said, covering her shoulders with a light grip. "In my journey, I had betrayed, which made me feel alert. But now, I choose to separate this burden from you." His voice fell, and the air around him suddenly distorted, and a mist storm emerged from the stone wall, condensing into a group of illusions. The scene of two people separating, Lena was swallowed by the darkness, and Carl faced countless enemies alone. His figure slammed in the illusion, and the slight light was scattered, and he could not get close to her. "Is this a try?" Lena whispered, and she felt the energy of the hanging wall rushing her to act. The illusion added to the drama, forcing them to face the cracks in their hearts. Lena lifted the hanging wall and tried to scatter the fog, but found it like an invisible net that pulled them in different directions. "Carl, we can't separate," she shouted, full of urgency. She rushed towards him, blocked by an invisible force. "Remember what I said, this is just a phantom." Carl responded, and he pulled out the sword, and the blade reflected a cold light, breaking through the air. "Trust me, just as I trust you." He strode forward, pointing at the core of the illusion, and the energy dissipated like a wave. Lena felt his determination, held the sling tightly, and injected her own strength into it. The two energy straits intersect, the illusion begins to collapse, and the darkness gradually fades away. During the trial, their connection deepened. Lena glanced at the pain in Carl's eyes, which was the marks carved by the hidden family tragedy, and Carl also saw her rising from solitude. They stood shoulder to shoulder, working together to disintegrate the last phantom. When the mist dissipated, an open passage appeared in front of the stairs, and the sound of the flowing water became brighter and fresh. "We did it," Lena said, gasping, and erasing her sweat had turned into a warm reliance. Carl put his sword away and patted her on the shoulder. "Yes, let's go together." His voice was calm, and there was a new tacit understanding. They continued to move forward, their pace became more coordinated, and the glimmer of light at the stairs guided the front. In the night, the flowing water is like a gentle whisper, reflecting their tired and energetic figures. They walked from the stairs into the open passage, stepped onto the flat stone slabs, and the sound of running water was singing in front of them like a deep chant. An ancient mud breath was filled with the air. On the surrounding stone walls, vines winded like silent guards, and occasionally flashed runes cast a light blue light, cutting the shadow into unruly fragments. Lena went in before, and the hanging wall in her hand felt slightly warm, as if she was responding to the surrounding energy movement. She took a deep breath and tried to suppress the suspicion that arose in her heart. The echo from the blurred figure of her mother in the illusion made her wonder whether her life experience was like a never-ending mist. "This place feels alive," Lena said, her voice carrying a little curiosity, "and she is still alert." She lifted the hanging wall, and the glimmer of the hanging wall gradually spread out to explore hidden traces like a fine net. "It is guiding me, Carl. These runes, they depict the path of the spring, but it also seems to be testing my determination." Her words were straightforward and determined, hiding inner movements. She remembered the illusion of the moment before, and the betrayal shadow made her begin to doubt the truth of her own blood. Is the mother's departure just a ring of fate, or is it another layer of shackle she must face? Carl followed the side, his sword was unsheathed, his grip was as stable as a rock, his eyes slapped at the darkness. "Be careful, these runes may just be awesome." He responded, his verb was as calm as an ancient tree, and his wisdom was quenched from the battles of the past. His pace was slow and alert, while recalling his past. "I went deep into similar situations and chased family objects. At that time, I mistook a trap, causing teammates." He decided to do it, his eyes flashed slightly, and chose to share rather than bewilderment. "They were my allies, but they chose to protect themselves in crisis. At that moment, I learned that the real power was not the blade, but who could protect you behind you." His words were simple and powerful, revealing hidden warmth, allowing Lena to feel the sensation that arises from the pain. As they moved forward, the passage gradually narrowed, and the sound of flowing water became rapid, accompanied by a low growl coming from the front. Suddenly, the ground shook, and a huge northern European giant diamond was diamond from the stones. Its body was as big as a mountain, its fur covered with flashes of frost, and its eyes were like burning coal fire, radiating its original threat. The giant beast roared, its claws rolled over the stone wall, and the stones were quad-ripped. Lena instinctively retreated, the energy of the hanging crows swelled in her palm, and she focused on feeling the nearby runes. "There is a boundary here," she shouted, "if we can turn it on, we can weaken this thing." Her voice was filled with tension, without losing her courage. She felt her heart sank. Should we continue to escape the truth of our life experience, or embrace this mission? Carl immediately slapped in front of her, and the blade slammed out an arc, facing the attack of the giant beast. "Concentrate your strength and I'll hold it," he said commandably, calm and decisive. His sci-fi art is as fast as a storm, and every strike is precisely aimed at the weakness of the giant beast, and he does not forget to protect Lena. Remember, I told you about my family? That disaster not only left them, but also made me see the truth of hatred. I chose this path not to report it, but to protect a partner like you. His words continued in the battle, and each sentence was like a barrier, strengthening their connection. Lena clicked her head, closed her eyes, and slung the slam to the runes. The energy spreads like a wavy pattern, activates the hidden boundary. The light on the stone wall is radiant, forming a net of light that traps the giant beast, and its roar gradually becomes weaker. During this collaboration, Lena felt an unprecedented sense of co-bearing. The threat of the giant beast made her face the crack in her heart. She thought about her mother's back, or maybe it was not abandonment, but another form of protection. She shouted, "Carl, the boundary is stable. Let's end this together." She rushed forward, and the light of the hanging wall intertwined with Carl's razor, shattering the giant shell together. At the end of the battle, the giant beast transformed into a group of smoke dissipated, leaving behind a piece of stone engraved with a map of spring water. Lena picked it up and gasped, "We found the thread, this will bring us closer to the spring of light." Carl scattered into the sheath and turned to her, his eyes as soft as the morning light. "No, our steps get closer and closer," he said, patting her on the shoulder. The action was simple and tacit. They continued to move along the sound of the flowing water. The passage gradually became brighter, and a fresh wetness was brought into the air. Lena looked at the stone tablet in her hand, and a calmness appeared in her heart, and the piercing shadow seemed to disappear slightly. The night was covered by the old bulb, but their steps were more stable, flowing forward like flowing water. They continued to move forward along the ancient figures on the stone slabs, with faint silver lights shining along the edges, guiding a winding path. The passage gradually expanded and turned into a high-end hall. Flashed stones were embedded on the walls, casting a warm golden light, as if the sunrise was about to begin to appear. The air is filled with a mixture of soil and spices, making people feel the ancient movement here. Lena held the stone tightly, her steps were steady and vigilant. Her eyes swept across the surrounding arch. This map points to the core of the spring, but the surrounding atmosphere seems to be something is exploring. Her words were crisp and direct, revealing an inner warning, and the doubts in her own life made her more eager to prove her value. Carl walked beside her, pressing the handle of the sword with his hands, his eyes as calm as a deep pool. His breathing was smooth and he was ready to fight at any time. "These gems may have traps, don't trust the surface too much," he said, his voice low and powerful, with insights drawn from countless crises. He didn't say much, but he always pointed to the key points, allowing Lena to feel the reliable support. He recalled his wandering years, but only said, "I used to pay for a piece of fragments, and my allies backed my promises at that time. I learned that the real alliance was in action, not in words." Deep in the hall, a cold air flowed over, accompanied by a deep murmur. Suddenly, a movie spirit guarded the corner of the darkness. Its shape is like a twisted smoke, with dark flames on its edges, and its eyes flashing with red light of desire. This is the incarnation of the Demon King Pioneer, controlling the light and shadow around him, making the light of the stone twisted and unstable. Shadow Soul let out a sharp roar and rolled towards them. Dark energy swept towards Lena like a whip. Her heartbeats accelerated, and the warm swelling burst out in her palms. She instinctively lifted it up. "I can feel, this thing is trying my will," she shouted, her calmness trembling with a trembling. Deep inside, the suspicion of the figure of her mother swelled like a tide, and was strongly pressed down by her and turned into a driving force. Carl quickly pulled the sword, and the sword drew a quick arc and took the first wave of attacks. "Concentrate your energy, I'll guard the defense," he ordered, the sci-fi and smooth movement, and each blow was like a rock in the storm, protecting Lena. His movements did not hesitate, and at the same time added, "My past has been like an opponent, and that battle has left everything about me, but it also taught me that protecting a partner is more important than revenge." As soon as the voice fell, he turned around and split a group of dark smoke, giving Lena time. Lena closed her eyes, took a deep breath and regulating her breath, and hung the stones against the hall. The energy dissipates like a ripple, activates the hidden protection layer, and the light on the wall condenses into a solid barrier, trapping the shadow guard in the center. The roar of the guard became violent, as it tried to tear the barrier and the dark flames licked the surroundings. "It is invading my thoughts," Lena murmured, feeling a cold touch and trying to draw on her heart. It might be the phantom of the truth of her life, but she gritted her teeth and shouted, "No, I won't retreat. This is my mission." Her voice burst out with new power, and the light of the hanging wall became stronger, strengthening the barrier. The battle reached its climax, and Carl took advantage of the opportunity to rush in, and the blade stabbed towards the Guardian core like a flash. "Your power is growing, Lena. Hold on," he encouraged loudly, and the swordsman planned to break through the darkness, forcing the guard to retreat. Every step of his hand was full of sexuality, and his eyes flashed back to his memory. "That year, what I lost was not a fight, but trust. But now, I choose to trust you." Lena heard him, her heart ignited like a flame. She rushed forward and combined the hanging light with Car's sword. An array of light teared open the Guardian's smoke outer shell. The last sound of morning sound was released, which disintegrated into pieces, leaving behind a shining fragment of the artifact. It was shaped like crystal, and it moved pure energy like a heart. After the battle ended, the hall returned to peace and the gems of stone illuminated the surroundings gently. Lena picked up the artifact fragments and felt that it had a co-bearing vein with the hanging wall, and a calm warm current flowed into her body. She turned to Car and smiled, "We did it. This fragment will bring us closer to the spring." Her spirit relaxed a little, and the piercing inside seemed to be integrated into the mission's determination. Carl took the ball, patted her on the shoulder, and looked forward softly. "Yes, our road is still long," he said, and they continued to penetrate the hall, stepping on the ground where light and shadows intersect, and a fresh fragrance of spring water was brought into the air. Lena's fingers gently smeared the artifact fragments, and a stable force appeared in her heart, as if she had found a new balance in this adventure. Although the night has not receded, their pace is even more visible, like a stream, flowing towards the unknown depths. They walked along the corridor deep in the hall, and the fragments of the artifact shaking slightly in Lena's hands, like a living heart, guiding the way forward. The vibration brought a fresh energy ripples, as if the hidden stream was lying on the ground. Their steps reverberated lightly on the stone slab, and the air was filled with the moisture of mud and the faint fragrance of flowers, making people feel that the spring of light was close to each other. Lena raised the fragments high, watching the light inside it, and the soft blue and white movements calmed her mind. "This is calling me," she said. Her voice must have a curiosity, as excited as the explorer saw the treasure for the first time, and also had a warning about the unknown. Carl walked beside her, holding the handle with his hands on his hands. His eyes swept over the surrounding arches. The stone walls there were carved with ancient runes, projecting a faint green dye. "Be careful, the energy here is not simple," he reminded in a low voice, his verbal sturdy manner as a mountain, and the wisdom that has been tempered from the past wars. He didn't say much, but each sentence was like a sword, pointing to potential dangers. He recalled his wandering years, when he confronted the betrayer in the wilderness. "I lost my companion for the likeness of fragments, and that taught me that the real power comes from the heart, not from the outside." His words were simple and powerful, injecting an invisible courage into Lena. As they entered the core, a strong wave of energy came towards them, turning the surrounding air into a stream. The spring of light appeared in front of you, and a hot white light rose in the center of a pool of flashing blue water, piercing the dome. The light jumped like a living creature, triggering a hidden conflict in Lena's body. She suddenly felt an icy phantom rising from the spring water and turning into a blurred figure. It was her mother's image. Her face was blurred and familiar, and her eyes were full of responsibility. "Why did you give us up? Is your mission just to escape?" Phantom's voice was like a whisper, penetrating into her heart, arousing doubts that had been long. Lena's breathing was rapid. She held the hanging wall tightly, trying to suppress the emotional whirlpool on the swelling. "No. I won't be controlled by you," she shouted. Her breath was chaotic and fragile, and the shadow from the lonely year-old turned into a tangible test at this moment. At the same time, the Demon King's remaining strength appeared, and a group of twisted shadows condensed from the fountain, shaped like pitch-black vines, and purple flames were emitted from the edges. They extend like living things, trying to draw Lena, while releasing a mental attack, making her thoughts chaotic like a whirlwind. Carl immediately stepped forward, and the blade drew a quick arc, slashing the nearest vine. "Concentrate, I'll hold on to these things," he ordered. The movement was flowing and precise, and each blow was like a barrier in a rainstorm, stabbing her. His eyes flashed back. "I had faced a phantom that year, which left what I cherish most. But I learned it, protecting allies is protecting myself." These words pierced Lena's heart like a penis, making her feel the reliable support. Lena knelt beside the spring, closed her eyes, and took a deep breath to regulate her breath. She put the hanging wall and the artifact fragments together, feeling the energy between the two gathered like a river. During meditation, she faced the accusation of the phantom of her life experience, and the vague image of her mother kept approaching, revealing her inner trauma, from the helplessness of the orphan to the responsibility of the guardian. "I'm not escaping, I'm finding myself," she murmured, turning emotions into strength. The sudden burst burned like a flame, gradually fusing the ancient energy of the hanging wall with her will. The light of the spring water was approaching her, turning into a warm barrier, pushing back the shadow vines. As the battle entered the white heat, the devil's remaining strength emitted a sharp hissing, trying to tear her apart. Her hair. Carl took advantage of the gap and rushed in, and the sword was like a rapid wind, and the continuous data slammed the vines. "Your will is growing, Lena. Don't let them move you," he shouted, with an intense passion in his voice. Every step he took was full of energy, as if he was regaining his past battles, and focused more on the present. Lena felt his support, like a line of dawn illuminating the darkness. She stood up and released the fused energy, and a dazzling silver-white light burst out from her body, swallowing the shadow guard. The vines disintegrate in the light and turn into invisible smoke, and the spring water returns to its tranquility. After everything was over, Lena stood by the fountain, her chest undulating, feeling an unprecedented sense of stability. She turned to Carl, lightly speaking, "Thank you, I understand now." Her voice was soft and new power. He put his sword away and patted her on the shoulder. "The way we walked together is the real power." They continued to move forward, along the edge of the spring. Their steps were more coordinated, and the air was filled with fresh energy ripples. There seemed to be a greater light waiting ahead. They moved along the edge of the spring, and the air around them gradually became thick and full of force, as if the hidden tide was pulling the earth. The artifact fragments in Lena's hand scattered a warm movement, leading them into the core battlefield of Eldest. There, a group of invisible dark vortexes sit on the ancient stone turf, like a black hole that devours stars, emitting cold purple lights on the edges, trying to swallow no light sources. Carl's eyes were solemn. He held the handle tightly and walked calmly beside Lena. "That's the end," he said, his voice like a low river, with the determination of a long battle. "Don't let fear control you. If we go here, we should end the shadow." Lena responded with a slight response, her heartbeat as powerful as a war drum, and the long-hidden trauma in her heart has now turned into a clear heart of determination. She lifted up pieces, allowing its light to fly with the spring water, and the soft white light gradually spread out, illuminating the silhouette of the swirl. The dark vortex seemed to perceive the threat, suddenly swelled, and released a layer of magic attack. The phantom came like a tide. First, the blurred figure turned into the lonely month of her childhood. In the cold room of the orphanage, there was the blurred image of her mother, which now became clearer, and her eyes were filled with regret. "You chose to escape, why don't you face us?" The phantom murmured, like a fallen leaf in the autumn wind, trying to move her will. But Lena did not regress. She took a deep breath and held the fragments tightly against her chest. "I have never escaped," she responded, lying in her words like a new vine, gradually swaying her beliefs. "These memories are my power, not a shackle." At the same time, Carl had already rushed forward, and the blade drew a quick arc, slashing the dark touch that extended from the vortex. Every time he slaps, it is accompanied by his inner shouting. "I lost everything," he said loudly, revealing hidden pain in his breath, like a long-buried rock that finally broke. At that time, I thought revenge was the only way out, and I found that the real support came from my partner. His words guarded Lena like a shield, making her feel a warm shared bird. The battle became fierce, and the dark whirlwinds roared sharply, and the illusion continued to intensify. The picture pulled Lena's thoughts into the turbulent purity. She closed her eyes, focused on the inner energy, and fused the artifact light with her own will. The power rose like a spring, dissolving the phantom's attack. The image she saw her mother slowly became softer, as if she was saying, "You have grown." At this moment, Lena's slime water slipped down, bringing a sense of sensation. "Thank you, Mom," she said lightly. "I will use this mission to protect our world." Carl saw the situation and attacked more violently. The sword light flashed like a rain, and his every blow was filled with the echo of the shadows of the past. "I betrayed my teacher back then, for survival," he confessed, with regret and distraction mixed in his voice, "but now, I choose to protect rather than destroy." His art not only prevents the enemy, but also emotional excitement, and each move accurately cuts the extension of the vortex. Lena felt his power, so she released the fused energy, and a brilliant silver light burst out from her hands, intertwining with Car's sword, and jointly rushing towards the core of the vortex. The vortex of darkness twisted and disintegrated in the light, and made its last wail. The form that swallowed everything gradually dissipated, revealing a faint dawn that rose from the horizon. The eternal night on Eldest began to fade, and the air around it became fresh and full of life. Lena and Carl stood there, gasping, looking at each other. "We did it," Lena said, a smile on her lips, her words sing like a new stream, with the scent of hope. Carl put his sword away and lightly said, "Yes, this is not only the end, but also the beginning." They looked away together, and the dawn illuminated the entire mainland and brought peace for a long time. In this peaceful moment, Lena felt the change in her heart. She was no longer the orphan full of doubts, but a true guardian. Carl's eyes also calmed down, and the pain seemed to have turned into past. They turned away from the battlefield, their pace was slow and coordinated, and they embarked on the road of return, and the world woke up behind them.